Hey guys, you are listening to Just One Song. I'm your guest host today, and my name is RJ of TeleTalks and Stream Talk Repeat. And with me is your guys' favorite hosts, Mr. Kurt, Leandro, Adam, and our fact checker, Monica. How are you guys doing?
Good evening. Thanks for having us, RJ.
You're welcome.
RJ, you need to intro the podcast every night.
Dude, that was beautiful.
Yeah,
I have some practice. While you're listening to this, I'm taking over. So on today's episode, we are going to be talking about, I don't know if you guys have heard of the term gear acquisition syndrome. Okay. That's what it stands for. Okay. So it's really big amongst like YouTubers, but that being said, essentially it's a way to fight like just like falling down the rabbit hole of like, man, I need that new pedal. I'm going to watch 10 videos about that pedal. I'm going to watch 10 videos about that guitar, 20 videos about that amp. Instead of actually just making the music, I found myself falling down these rabbit holes to where like I would put off music projects of like, no, I ain't gonna do that until I get this one piece of gear, because that one piece of gear is gonna really fucking make this song.
Focusing on the polish rather than focusing on the canvas. It's
not even like you're buying into what these guys are paid to do. Like, don't get me wrong, I have really close friends who do it, but at the end of the day, I think there's this synth guy that I follow on YouTube. His name's Gabe Miller. He's like an engineering by actual trade, but he's like, don't forget that it is our job to show you these new products, and it is a tax write-off when we buy these products if they're not already given to us.
Yep.
So point is, stop buying gear until it's until you can write it off on your taxes.
and that is not that's not a niche issue either. I feel like you can use that same mentality in a kid going to music conservatory that needs to get the $2,000. I don't even know how much violins cost. I'm sure they cost more than that.
No.
But
any hobby, podcasting. Okay, I'm not gonna start podcasting until I have a Rode Procaster set up that I can have friends remote in and call in because I can run my line in, and I'm gonna have a SM7B as my vocal mic going into a cloud lifter because just a regular SM57 isn't fucking good enough.
Like SM57, work for the industry, baby. You have a USB mic too, you're telling me.
Yeah. So I had a whole podcast set up because I was doing a podcast like local, I didn't have guests. So I had the whole had pod mics, I had a cloud lifter, I had a Zoom H6. I still have the Zoom H6 for like video stuff. But no, honestly, I remote to 90% of my podcast. So this $100 mic I think sounds great. Another thing for me is I don't have a traditional computer setup. You are seeing me. Well, the listeners aren't seeing me, but this is all being done through an iPad right now, an iPad Air specifically.
Really?
That's a good.
All my music is done through the iPad Air.
That's dope.
I edit my videos 4K and all that stuff. iPad Air.
It's a great product. Yeah.
Because I started my channel with iPhone.
Oh, shoot.
And I had like an interface that can plug up to my iPhone to get good quality. Like, basically, it's just about working with what you got and stop using excuses to postpone making actual music. And since I've sold off a lot of my gear and have just very essential stuff, I've made more music in the last year than I have in the last like 5 years when I started like trying to like do YouTube and falling down that rabbit hole of like, well, YouTube, I can't do YouTube. I don't get all the new products, like the new hotness that everybody wants for all the clicks, But I found out that like, that's okay, because guess what? If you're a smaller YouTuber, even if you did get the new product on day one, like everybody else, or pre-release, like everybody else, you'll get fucking buried because you're nobody according to the algorithm. So just focus on what you want to do. And so I've transitioned into wanting to just show what I'm doing, making music, educate people, and let them know that the barrier to entry, like I know that's a common thing amongst like home musicians, but like the barrier to entry is super small. Don't get caught up in the gear. Like from day one, even when I started like 10 years ago, like I'm on like gear forums. You know, I was like trying to look up like even though I had a SM57 for a guitar mic, I wanted to do like higher gain sounds, and like all like the people on like bougie. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gear Sluts. Like nobody talks about them anymore. But Gear Sluts is a forum that was like for recording for many years. It was like the place to go, and so I got it in my head that like I need this. I have to have this because somebody on the fucking internet told me I was wrong. They have a bigger budget than me, but besides all that, like I have to have this.
I think you kind of proved your point as far as like your ability to still remain creative without having all the bells and whistles, the high end gear, because that is a whole different culture of creating, right? It's not necessarily creating for the sake of art or for the sake of creation. It's the sake of playing to the algorithm, show and tell, clicks. I mean, it's money. It's a business at the end of the day that people are monetizing. But that puts in like a kind of a misrepresentation of why a lot of people get into music in the first place. They do it because they can relate, they can communicate, they want to express themselves, but then they go on YouTube and they're like, oh, well, they get in this like kind of circular rabbit hole where they think, oh, I need to have all this stuff, or at least I need to have this. But you're right, the barrier to entry or the access to the art. I mean, mind you, having an iPhone is a privilege. A lot of people there's more people that have iPhones than have ribbon mics. So you could totally start writing music or start a podcast, start a YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
I think this also goes back to like what we were talking about in our last episode about copyright, of how it's so easy for more people now to make music and release music. And most Apple products come with GarageBand for free.
Yep,
absolutely.
You know, when I was showing RJ earlier my Stratocaster, my Fender. It's not even a true Stratocaster, but you know what? It's clean and it's got a decent tone. It's not anything special. But you plug that into a digital audio workstation, you plug that into GarageBand, you have a million plugins that can make that guitar sound like anything you want it to. And if you are creative enough to write songs, you're creative enough to play with those knobs and to make it sound like 30 other different types of guitars. So I'm really grateful for like how far digital music and digital recording has come. And for me personally, my biggest barrier for recording music was how much of a pain in the ass it is to set up and plug in. And if you can just have like 4 or 5 pieces of gear and just leave them all hooked up in one little area, plug in and go. You can be up within 10 minutes.
Well, everybody even has a phone. Like you can just clap, or you could just record off of your phone, just make little beats, you know, literally just speak into it, get a recording app, and you can always put it into a computer later, or even just edit on your phone itself. Like there's so many free apps out there that everyone can do it.
RJ touched on something with the amount of access that we have. It's overwhelming. So like there's an abundance of, you can have this, you can record this.
So that's where the danger comes from, right? So the danger comes from, there's so many options and there's so many opinions out there that you'll fall down the rabbit hole of like, what is the right decision to make, instead of just pulling the trigger on something and going for it. Also, I don't play through an app. I play through this thing. It's called it's made by Line 6. It's called an HX Stomp. It has everything I need to it. If I send you a music clip, could you add it to this? Just curious. The point I want to make is, when you hear this, keep in mind, it was done through an HX Stomp into an iPad, done through GarageBand. The guitar was done through GarageBand. And everything was just that simple. And it was, you know, I have one of the newer iPads. I'm lucky enough to have the newer iPad Air that has USB-C, which I feel like is a game changer.
Oh, wow.
Opens up, you know, using regular interfaces, using everything, which is kind of cool. But you could always get adapters. That's
all right. Well, let's have a listen.
That's it.
That was good.
I thought for shits and giggles you're going to play it again.
That was
Wait, hold on.
Yep.
So I used GarageBand because I wanted to use something that the majority of people, if they have an iOS device, they have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that they don't have access to that's not free is I use a plugin called Mixbox by IK Multimedia. It's really cool. It's like a 500 series like Mixbox, so I can add a bunch of different preamps and stuff. But it's cool. HX Stomp into it. I think it's 2 guitars for the rhythm, 2 guitars for the lead, and 1 bass, and then the Smart Drummer feature. That's just Smart Drums. It's
Fantastic.
not even. It's not programmed. It's like literally like I think his name's like Chad or some shit.
Yeah.
Like, they give this fucking stupid name
with
like
the silhouette of like if it's like an indie drummer, you could tell he's got tattoos, but he's like only gray silhouette.
So many tracks with the Smart Drummers. They are awesome.
Saves you time, man. It gets you right into the thick of creating. You don't have to worry about all these little auxiliary things that you think you have to worry about.
Right.
It's better than
that's the thing.
Too.
You know, like everyone's like, I even have buddies. They're like, oh, well, I got to get Easy Drummer. Or I got to get Superior Drummer. No, you don't. You have GarageBand. Just use it.
The only people that care is you and like the niche small amount percentage of people that care, which is like they don't matter. Like the people that are going to listen and relate to your music, they're not going to give a shit if it was that little like wind up monkey toy and that was your drummer. Who cares?
No, as long as it sounds good. And I think we let our eyes fool us into what we think sounds good or what's passable. But I'm fucking proud of that track. I'd put it out on iTunes if I needed to, or make it a full song or whatever. I have no problem with that. And I think it sounds just as good as anything else. And that was, like I said, done on my iPad. I did run my HX. Yeah, I mixed it. And when I say mix, it's a very liberal, like I panned left, right, did a tad bit of EQ. Yeah. Like tad. Because I had 3 hours to make that from start to finish. Like I had 3 hours. My kid was gone. They were at grandma's house, like hanging out. I had 3 hours to record a video of me making that song from start to finish and just get it done.
I love that you used programs and, for the most part, material that is available to like a big swath of people that are going to listen to this podcast. But it's a very equitable way of not just treating your art and the way that you create, but an equitable way for people that will internalize that. They're going to, like, even me, I'm like, wow, that's really cool, RJ, that you're able to create something that's substantial. It has substance in a 3 hour time, and it's art, right? You just created something and you're letting people know, like, you don't need to buy the most expensive stuff out there. You can just create, just make.
Side note, I did that in my dining room. This is where I'm at. I'm in my dining room.
You know what? I think
that's
you mentioned
a dope dining room.
You sent me a song and I said, is this bedroom pop? And you're like, no, dude, it's dining room pop. And I laughed because I realized I was going to message you back. And as I was texting you, I was like, oh, he recorded in his dining room.
So we have a baking company, a side baking company. Andrea, she's a pastry chef by trade. Who was recently diagnosed with celiac disease, which means she cannot have gluten. So we started our own gluten-free baking company.
Oh, cool.
Anyways, so you can't see it.
What's the name? Let's plug it, baby.
Yeah.
Moon Sugar Magic. It's
Moon Sugar Magic.
Inspired by like Sailor Moon. She's a
nice.
Love Japanese anime. Love Sailor Moon.
But no. So, I'm coming from a place of, at one point in time, I had, maybe 10 guitars, a couple basses, had a full-on like recording studio in Texas, video studio, to now I have one guitar, one electric guitar, one bass guitar, one acoustic guitar. I don't even have an amp anymore. I have just the HX Stomp. I have one synth. I have one, or actually now I have two. As of today, I have two. I'm kind of excited.
I was gonna say, you sent me a video of a synth tonight, RJ. Don't be fibbing now.
So I for my birthday, my family who's in Texas decided to buy me a nice treat. It is the Arturia Micro Freak. What's cool about this is it's not a traditional keyboard; it's touch capacitive. So the effects literally change with how much skin contact is on the keypad.
That's kinky. The way that you said skin contact, kind of. The producer of the group is getting super torqued for all the digital gear.
Oh yeah. So then I have, but before that, I only had one synth, and technically, it's not just a traditional synth. It's a groove box. It's the Novation Trax, which in and of itself is like one of the fucking coolest fucking pieces of music gear. I think it's truly life-changing because if you learn the ins and outs, I make music on my break because I could just bring that, and because it's battery powered and USB-C, charge it up. I have a cheap pair of in-ear monitors. Like, dude, I'm making beats within like 5 minutes just so I can flex that muscle, because for a long time I wasn't able to flex that muscle, especially being in like a studio apartment or a small apartment with a kid and limited time. Like, anything that can fucking cut out time from actually just making music, I am all about. I don't want to sit there and be like, what guitar should I play today? And granted, I know music, this won't work for everybody, but it works for me. I think it would work for a lot of people, like, because they won't get hung up on the stupid things that don't fucking matter, in my opinion.
And it keeps you from the important part, which is the creation. And just getting down to the nitty gritty.
Exactly.
There's I mentioned this book probably about 10 times on this podcast, but Jeff Tweedy, the lead singer of Wilco, wrote a book called How to Write One Song. Very similar to the name of this podcast, which is just one song. But one of the main takeaways of that book is like a lot of people don't sit down to just play the guitar or sit in front of a piano or plug in their MIDI, make a beat, because they're like, well, it's going to take me 10 minutes to, get everything set up. And then I won't be able to write anything good in 10 minutes. So I don't have 2 hours. Who has 2 hours during their day with work, school, kids, paying the bills? Nobody has 2 hours. So because you have this expectation of like, I'm only going to create if I have 2 hours or if I have a certain amount of time so I can create something great. It's not about creating something great. It's about sitting down every day and just having that catharsis. And honestly, that's where some of the best ideas come from. If you only limit yourself to like, I only have 5-10 minutes on my lunch break. Sometimes magic comes out of that.
Yeah. Think about this. Like, I have an addiction to YouTube videos of like,
people eating food.
No, not mukbang.
That's what it's called.
Mukbang.
Wait, there's like Korean mukbang, like women that make millions of dollars just from eating a loaf of bread.
Just a little side note. I know about this podcast because of Leandro, because I used to run a really shitty music blog. Because like I've always been into content creating, music, and all that stuff, and I ran a shitty music blog, and I wanted to feature Castle Pines. I came across them, and I'm like, I don't fucking know how I didn't know these people. Like I knew people around them because we went to the fucking same high school and shit. But how the fuck do I not know who Leandro is? Because I know everybody else around him. Mm-hmm. It's funny because even in a small town like Corona, I still never ran into the motherfucker. And so after I literally, flew and lived in a state 1,500 miles away.
Yeah, we didn't connect until you had already moved to Texas. That band,
that's crazy.
That band was a practice in minimalism on my part because I was pretty much homeless. I was living out of my car, couch surfing. And I was like, hey, I need a way to like get the way that I started writing songs. And that's how Castle Pine started. I didn't have an amp. I didn't have an electric guitar. I had an acoustic guitar. And we started a band. So you
know what? Still to this day, when I want to talk about pinnacles in terms of music scenes in Corona, I will still play I Saw You on the Radio for anybody who's willing to fucking listen.
Well, that's awesome, man.
Because that track, when the first time I heard that track, I was like, how could something this good And sorry, I'm gushing over Leandro, guys. And it's stuff like that you make you realize, like, in the day, if you could just write and hone that craft and sharpen that tool, you'll get better at it. Don't just fall down the YouTube rabbit hole. And I think even at that time, it probably wasn't as bad. But now it's extremely bad with any version of the market that you are getting into for like instruments.
Leo made a good point when he brought up the Jeff Tweedy book with the whole 10-minute song part of it. You know, do you have 10 minutes in your day to write a song? Like, yeah. And, you know, for the most part, for like a year, every 10-minute song you write is going to suck. But after a year, you're going to get really, really, really good at writing songs in 10 minutes. They're not going to be very long, but you're going to have some nice little, I don't know, little blurbs. I think about that dude. He's a Japanese guitar player. Have you seen him? And he plays with like open tuning. I forget his name. He just got a huge sponsorship from Ibanez.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. He plays like prog rock shit.
Yeah, and it's like
really technical
rock,
stuff,
but like math rock.
Yeah, and it's like these really, really complicated
finger tapping runs.
Yeah. But
he's like a more he's the male version of Yvette Young from Covet.
Dude, there you go. Even better.
I don't know his name.
Yeah,
but he leans more into like the metal stuff versus she's like more like.
So we're talking about different specifically Cajun and Southern culture. Texas, a lot of music styles that come from that area are all disenfranchised, intermixed, Black, Latino, from history, like a history of like just being marginalized and poor. Yet some of the best music that has ever been written has come out of that area with like literally milk jugs, strings tied on like pieces of wood. And yet you have this whole musical language that evolved from like, you know, adversity and lack of resources still allows you to create.
You know, that's funny you mention that, because saying it like that, like I have friends in Nashville and I have friends in Texas and I have session player friends. A session player friend, like my session player, like buddies, they don't fucking care that you have the newest or some custom shop Fender or some whatever. They're like, plug into a hot rod, fucking Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. Let's fucking do this. I'm going to record this in one take and I'm going to get paid and get the fuck out.
Yep, 100%.
And I think it's funny because, like, again, it just boils down to the consumerism of all. It's like, if you're a musician, it's no different than getting the fucking newest iPhone every year. Like, it's the same thing. It's that same fix.
So, like, here's my question to you. Like, you can have, like, you know, say you're someone, you have the equipment. What else do you need outside the equipment to just start, like, plugging away and making stuff? Like, what kind of mentality do you need? Yeah, time.
Time. And if you're like me, who has to have a full-time job, who is also a dad, who also wants to do a podcast, who also wants to guest on podcasts, who also wants to run a YouTube channel, you figure out a way. If you have multiple passions, it's a matter of maybe you can find a way to bridge the gap to combine those things. That way you have an excuse and the time to do both, whether it's, like I said, music and video, so therefore I'm going to start a YouTube channel about making music, or it's like I like streaming, I love these movies, I love these comics, blah blah blah, and I like podcasting, so I'm going to start a podcast talking about them.
So RJ, so it seems like you have like a lot of projects going on. It seems like in order to get these projects up and going, you have to have a lot of consistency, a lot of discipline, a lot of accountability to yourself and the people that are listening to you. Like, these are things that we have to, I guess it's coming around to, these are the things that we kind of have to focus on more than just going out and buying all the gear and getting because I do music production. So yeah, in the beginning, I used to get all the different apps, you know, the different VSTs, you know, anything that'll change the sound, anything that's a synthesizer, anything, waves, just any sample.
Dude, I've spent so much money on, because like one of my passions is also scoring film, which I did briefly in Texas. I've done about 12 films, 1 video game. It was all like local stuff. But I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on VSTs.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's stupid. And I don't use a single one now because I'm only using an iPad.
Right? And yeah, that's when I find myself producing now, and I have like the 5 that I go to, and that's it. Out of the hundreds that I have, and it's just like, holy shit, I didn't need any of this. I just needed a computer that worked and something that could get me through it. And I used to be in bands too. And you know what? So yeah, I went to school with Leo and Kurt, and I graduated in music with a bass instrument. When I started playing bass, I started playing when I was in my 20s, my early 20s, and I didn't even have a bass guitar. I joined a band and I said, "Oh, you guys need a bassist?"
How stereotypical of a bass player are you?
Exactly. So I borrowed a bass from one of my buddies that I knew hadn't been in a band for a while, and he had another bass. So I borrowed his bass. One of the tuners wasn't even a tuning it wasn't even a tuner. It was a
lobster claw,
or it was a screw, and I had a screwdriver, and in order to tune the bass, I just twisted it every single practice. But because it's a bass, you know, you don't have to tune it as often as a guitar or anything. So it kind of worked out until my now wife, then girlfriend, bought me a bass.
She just bought you a tuner.
She's just like, you know what? You're an embarrassment, and I need you to not play a bass that...
Is it the white one you lent me for like a year?
Yeah, that Ibanez. Yep, that was the one.
That's something so common amongst local musicians and bands. Like I don't know how much of my gear that I've gotten just from friends. Like, oh, here, let's borrow this, or like cords and cables and stuff like that. Oh, yeah. That's another big creation is community. Like I feel like there's a lot of isolation. I mean, coming out of the pandemic, coming out of like the way that music is produced now, you're very isolated. You're in front of a laptop. You're in front of a keyboard. A lot of the music that we mentioned and a lot of the cultures in which music was created with not a lot of resources was done so in a community. And you guys are all mentioning things like you even within these kind of like sort of isolated little microcosms, there's still small communities like RJ with your YouTube and your podcast buddies. Like I think that's an important aspect of creation.
Absolutely. So it's funny because like Andrea gives me shit about my fake internet friends, but like legitimately, like, you know, all my friends who don't live in this state fly out to NAMM, and we hang out and we rent a fucking NAMM house and we fucking party hard once a year. Like I didn't feel that isolation that most people did who were more social in person than I, because I had already been in that mode of like, most of the conversations I have with my best friends are over fucking Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and text messages because they're fucking 3,000 miles away, 1,500 miles away. Like, I had a podcast for 2 years with 3 people I've never actually met in person, but we are great friends and we still talk to this day. And it's pretty awesome that, like, there is that community. That's the one benefit I will say about, like, this, like, consumerism, like, thing is because, like, we all came together because of the gear. I'm just learning now, though, that the gear isn't what makes you. It can bring you together, but it isn't what makes you a better musician or a better songwriter, etc.
What makes you a better songwriter, a better musician?
Consistency, discipline, and accountability to yourself and to your audience.
To be fair, to Adam's point, I have like a friend who's about to hit 100,000 subs. Shout out to Ryan from 60 Cycle Hum and Steve Rao, who's like my best friend. Matter of fact, you know, they're about to hit 100,000 subs, and they are legitimately, arguably, one of the most downloaded gear podcasts in the world. But Ryan, who started off as just like a graphic artist, like also a musician, that guy has hustle like I've never fucking seen before in my entire life. Perspective. NAMM, the last big NAMM that I went to was 2020 because it was right before the pandemic, and it was a good NAMM.
NAMM is...
It's basically where a lot of companies premiere their newest gear, their newest lineup, and it's a way for companies to meet up with distributors to actually sell their product in stores like Guitar Center or even your local music shop.
A giant trade show hosted at the Orange County Anaheim Convention Center. I've been a couple times, and it is a wild,
3 floors. It's amazing.
Why do you go to NAMM?
Why do I go to NAMM? Because it's a good way to meet up with my community of smaller builders and content creators. And it's just a fun time. It's a good excuse to hang out with friends that I don't get to see literally but once a year. And because of COVID, like it's been now going on, I feel like a century. Point is, I want to go back to Ryan, who, like I said, has a hustle mentality, who is dedicated and consistent. This man, there's 2 types of passes. You get a vendor pass and you get a media pass. It's not typically opened up to the public, but like one day out of the 4 days that's going on. So the vendor pass gets you in at the earliest at 4 a.m. because ideally, if you're a vendor, you're setting up your booth, you're making adjustments, et cetera, right? And then the media pass, it gets you an hour early. Then like there's like a third like pass, like just like a regular NAMM musician pass, because at the end of the day you can just apply to be a NAMM member, which is like $2,000 a month. But if you're media, you can get in for free. If you're a vendor, you pay for your booth space. Anyways, he got a vendor pass, so he was going at 4:00. I get in there at like 8:00 in the morning, and I run into him. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? He's like, just hustling. I think I'm 18 videos in. This motherfucker recorded 18 YouTube videos demoing music gear from 4 to 8:00. I just got in, and he's already 18 videos. Even at reviewing or releasing one video a week, that's almost half a year in content.
That's crazy.
Now, he released multiple videos within a week because, it's also important to be somewhat timely with some of these matters, right? Yeah. Because they're the newest of the new product. And because he has a larger subscriber base, it actually pops up in people's feed. But this dude made 18 videos before I even got into the convention center. This guy puts out shit, and that's why he's at 100,000 subs. I put out one video a month, if even that. And it's only why I'm at 500 subs, and I'm just, doing my own thing.
I commend you and Kurt. Kurt is also a parent. And a big part of this podcast, I would say he's a big engine of the content and the subject matter that we talk about and just getting us together to push this forward. So to see someone who's not only, like you, who's working full time as a kid, who has, a bunch of other things going on. Kurt's going to school. He's got a kid. Parents, people living their lives. There's a big overarching topic that I feel like we've kind of touched on with music minimalism and working within your means, what you have. And that's privilege in music. And a lot of YouTube's a perfect example. And the music industry is a perfect example of this, where it's just human nature. You're going to size yourself up to the person that's getting 200,000 streams or the person that has 150,000 subscribers. That's just who we are. But what we don't understand is like the difference between you and someone else's privilege, or like someone having the means to be able to and I'm notwithstanding the ability to like work hard and do something, like you're proving that point right there, RJ, that like you don't need to have a full studio to edit videos. You can do it on your phone commuting to work. That's not a very privileged way of like commuting or getting to work. That's like the way that most people commute, right? It's either driving a car.
Don't edit a video while driving to work.
Please do not.
Don't do that.
So, RJ, I was wondering, with minimalism, like I was saying earlier, I used to collect a lot of different VSTs, right? Mm-hmm. And after a while, like just with any other piece of gear, I realized that you have to learn every single piece of gear that you want to use. Mm-hmm. You have to read the manual. That takes time. You have to save the money for it. That takes time. You have to figure out, how does this work? What are all the buttons? How can I use it in my music? What projects am I going to use it in? And down to it, you might end up only using that piece of gear or that VST or any of that stuff 1 or 2 times, and then that's it. And you just wasted all that time when you could have been learning how to write some sort of new stuff that you could have done.
So here's the thing. That's a good thing. Mentor I've ever had when it comes to recording is like, hey, if you just get the sound right, that's going into the microphone, you're not going to have to EQ it because you got it right from the source.
Yeah,
exactly.
EQ is not a fixer. It's a way to emphasize. It's not to fix something. It's a way to emphasize something that you want to stand out in your mix.
100%. I love that you brought that point up. I used to work. I used to intern at 17th Street Studios down in Costa Mesa. Shout out to you, Lou. And yeah, I would have them, like if I was coming out with a track or if I was doing anything, I'd have them kind of like just listen to it, give me feedback and stuff. And 90% of the time, if something just was a little off, I'd just be like, just go re-record it. I'm like, wait, shouldn't I just try to fix it? They're like, no. Don't waste your time. Just go back in the booth. You're here. Just get it done now. And I was just like, oh shit. Like
if your first line when you're going into a mix, if your first line is, don't worry, I'll fix it in post, you are setting yourself up to fucking fail.
Yep.
When it comes to recording, that is. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're into songwriting, I get it. Maybe that's not your expertise. And it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be into recording. It's just it makes it accessible for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Can I pose a hypothetical? Let's say Monica decides tonight, hey, I want to start getting into music and I want to write a song and I want to put songs, but I have an hour in my day and I got a limited budget. Where should she start? Because
limited budget, that's a big limited budget. Budget is different for everybody. So.
Under $500.
Oh, I could get you something tasty.
Okay, so what? Where would someone in her position? I mean, $500. That's actually a lot if you know where to look.
Oh yeah.
She doesn't know where to look.
I could get you for $250, baby.
Okay.
Come on, let's do this. Let's do this.
And she has an hour in her day.
Because I obsess with gear, like fucking A. Okay, Monica, question. What kind of phone do you have?
A Galaxy something.
Why can't you just be iPhone and make it easy?
Boom, there you go.
But no. Okay, what kind of computer do you have?
I have a MacBook Pro that's over 10 years old.
So MacBook Pro, there we go. So we're going to go with a MacBook Pro. You have $250. We're not even going to go with the $500. $250. You're going to go pick up an audio box by PreSonus, the newest model, whatever it is. I think it's like $100.
Yep.
Go ahead and pick that up.
Does she need that?
Yep.
For sure?
Yes.
Yeah.
You need an interface. That's like bare minimum bar none. Okay. Like you can fill in MIDI notes on a fucking keyboard or you can fill in MIDI notes with a fucking mouse on the system. But look at that thing.
Yep.
Look at that thing.
$100.
Look at that thing. $100. That was my first interface. That's why I fucking mentioned that. And they even have a newer version than that.
Still use it. This is my second one.
Another brand you can go with is a Focusrite. It's going to come with audio. It's going to come with a DAW that is going to allow you at least do 8 tracks minimum. Mm-hmm. Okay, whether it's a Pro Tools Lite version or if it's PreSonus, which is Studio One, Studio One is one of the greatest DAWs ever made. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. The reason why I like it is because it's the closest thing to Logic that is cross-platform between PC and MacBook or Apple. Then let's see. Monica, question for you. What kind of music do you want to make in this said scenario?
Oh gosh.
You can make anything.
I know.
Well, you could, but I want to make something
Better
special.
question, Monica. What's the last song you listened to? And that's the genre.
You know what? I've been actually listening to the August and Everything After Counting Crows album from back in the day, the past week.
Even
Can't wait for
better.
a rock series.
Better. Okay.
That's good.
$250.
Wait, are Counting Crows butt rock? No.
No.
They're not?
No, I would consider
I
them like
associate them-
singer-songwriter. Singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Butt rock is Stained.
Rock Buck rock is staying Nickelback.
Is Tool butt rock?
Who sings?
No, that's prog.
That's who sings Headstrong.
Because like a legitimate genre, but rock.
Does she have an instrument, or is she starting from completely from scratch?
Let's say Monica has a she's gonna have a cheap keyboard because she played piano until she was like 12 or 13. So nothing too fancy. Maybe like a cheap Yamaha, something like $50.
Okay, so here's what we're doing. We're going with like says she talks to angels. So she's gonna use the free VST that she gets with Studio One. The piano is actually not that bad. She's gonna use this keyboard. I'm gonna assume this keyboard has either USB or MIDI. If not, I can recommend a MIDI controller. We'll go with the Korg Nano Key, which is like $50. We'll go with a Behringer SM57 knockoff for the vocal mic. Go with the Amazon fucking cable. The Behringer is like $25. So you're at $100 for the interface, $50 for the Nano Key, and about $25 plus $10 for a cord, $35. So you're at $185.
Cool. So you need interface, you need the DAW, and you need a controller.
But the DAW comes with the interface.
Okay.
Because the audio box comes with Studio One. That was my introduction. Focusrite comes with like a version of Ableton / also comes with a version of Pro Tools.
Yep.
So you're good there, and that's plenty to start. Like I said, the song, keep in perspective, the song that you heard earlier was not even 8 tracks. The song that I played, it was a drum smart track, 2 guitar rhythms, 2 guitar leads, 1 bass, 6 tracks.
6 tracks.
And to our listeners, a DAW is a digital audio
workstation.
Workstation.
That is technically the term, workstation.
And that is...
Would you say the user-friendly aspect of a DAW could inhibit or expand creativity?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I think that's again why I lean on Studio One. Studio One does a good balance of giving you introductory ways of getting into a DAW, but where GarageBand is really its own thing, and if you move yourself up from GarageBand to like let's say Logic, it's a different beast entirely. Where Studio One will get you into what is considered a traditional DAW. So that way, if you do upgrade to Logic, you're going to be there. You're going to understand these things. You're going to understand the workflow a lot better versus GarageBand is like, it's really simple, barrier to entry, but you're going to hit a headroom real quick, and you're going to either stay in that and just work with that, and you can make some amazing stuff, or you're going to move on and then you're going to have to learn a lot more newer things. With
YouTube, with the access to all the information that we have, I mean, you can spend, that's another part of the investment of like putting towards your craft, right? You're going to go on, like I wanted to learn Reaper a year and a half ago. So I watched, 3-4 hours of Reaper videos on YouTube.
Guess what, guys? Reaper's
free.
Exactly. And then that's another reason I wanted to mention Reaper was because, I mean, you can cut out that whole middleman of like having to get a DAW. In the first place.
So there's minimalism right there. For under $200, you did it. You can get everything you need to record and release a song.
Yeah, guys, and I want to really stress this because that audio box that Adam just showed, and I know this isn't a video podcast, but that one that he just fucking showed.
Which one is it?
the audio box, it's not even like the highest standard anymore.
Nope.
Like you can get
say what it
way
is.
better. It's made by Presonus, and you can, which is owned by Fender now. Fun fact.
So,
but the point is that I had nicer gear, but because I knew that gear so well, I actually scored films using that fucking 2-channel interface and a MIDI keyboard and like my guitar gear.
Mm-hmm.
There's guitar tracks on To Pimp a Butterfly that were recorded on an iPhone speaker. Like,
yeah.
And that's the thing. We don't need too much. Now, going back to the DAWs, I will say that, if you have an idea where you kind of want to go in your career, choosing a specific DAW would be best. But what do you think about FL Studios as a beginning DAW? Because I started off just before them, just before it was Fruity Loops. I was into, Cakewalk and Acid Pro and all those other...
So what you're trying to tell me is you fucking pirated a copy of FL Studio like every other producer.
No. I was one of the ones who bought FL Studio when it was Fruity Loops for $50 and had the lifetime upgrade.
Nice.
For $50.
So that's the joke. Like I know a lot of like hip hop producers who like it's always a cracked version of FL Studio that they started with. Like that's the general fucking like stereotype, right?
Mm-hmm. Always.
Focus on your craft, whatever it is, whether it's songwriting, storytelling, producing. It's more important about practicing than it is about focusing on the gear. If you're a producer like Adam, fucking go to guys like, Leandro, who are fucking writing songs out of their fucking car and be like, dude, let me record you for free.
Yep.
Let me record you for free. I want to practice. For dudes like Leandro, it's like, okay, let me fucking, I got 15 minutes while I'm working at fucking Walmart or whatever to fucking sit on a break and fucking play my acoustic guitar.
So if you have an overall recommendation for our listeners, one, like a 2-step process, kind of like what you did for Monica, but if you were just to boil it down to like, I don't know anything about recording, making music, but I have a passion to do so, or I have the desire to do so. What would be the overall kind of like message that you would say to our listeners?
This is where, again, it can become dangerous because of all the stuff that's out there and because of how the algorithm sells you and how YouTubers make money for a living, which is based off not just AdSense, but it's based off affiliate marketing. Mm-hmm. And you click on the link. For example, for those who don't know, if you have an Amazon affiliate link and you go and click on that link because you're interested in this $400 guitar that this YouTuber was promoting for you, even if you don't buy that guitar, because you clicked on that link and you go and buy, this top of the line fucking vibrator that has an airplane mode, like they still get a cut of that because if you click that link, it associates that link for like the next 24 to 48 hours. So anything you buy in that, they're going to get a cut of that. They're not going to charge you extra. It's included in the cost, but they're going to get a fucking cut of that. And that's how they make a living. And I don't blame anybody for making a living. Like my buddy Ryan, he makes a living doing, he fucking hustles hard.
And what's your buddy's shows again? Let's give him some more.
60 Cycle Hum, the guitar related music trading, playing, reviewing podcast. I think I fucked up their tagline, but it's like this long thing that's like super funny. Like their skit is like they basically, part of the shows they actually review really bad Craigslist postings. Dude. Like for like absurd gear or like just like really bad descriptions or like stupid descriptions of like homemade gear that they like try to sell. Like it's funny. Check them out. 60 Cycle Hum. Back to the YouTube thing. It is the best education you can get for the price because all it does is cost your fucking time. you can learn almost anything. I am not near a handyman, but you know how much handiwork I've done just from fucking watching a YouTube video? Mad respect to Leandra and Adam, who actually, and Kurt, it sounds like, who actually went to fucking school for this shit. Like, the degree is great because the degree implies that you actually learned something and you learned a trade.
An analogy I use for that is the restaurant industry. If you have a kid, or if you're a kid that just gets out of like a culinary institute, and then you go to a restaurant and you're like, I'd like to be the chef here, they'd be like, here you go wash some dishes and peel some potatoes.
Absolutely.
The best way to learn how to cook is to, like work your way up in the back of a kitchen. It's the same way with music. People, you got to grind, man, and you got to learn. It takes time. And that's the important thing is like, don't let these, we did talk about a lot of very concrete and abstract ideas as far as like what you need to buy and like things that you may or may not need. But at the end of the day, I think RJ made it abundantly clear that all you really need is that desire and the drive, and you'll make time.
Get a few bucks here and there to invest in better stuff. Go ahead. If you get a grant to go to school, absolutely go to school.
Yep.
Do I say this, but I still regret not going to fucking college. Absolutely. Don't let these imaginary roadblocks.
I think that's a good place to end with our listeners. Don't let imaginary roadblocks get in your own way, basically.
Absolutely. And that's why I practice music minimalism, because I don't want the gear to get in my way, because for many years now it did, and it sucked.
Allow yourself to be creative. Allow yourself to give yourself time and have grace with yourself, and you don't even don't do it in the sense of wanting to be famous or do it for yourself.
Do it because you like doing it.
Thank you for the call to creation, RJ, and allowing people to be creative. Also to not get overwhelmed, just sit down. And
as somebody who suffers from anxiety, it's easy to get wrapped up in stupid shit.
For sure. Yeah. Well, dude, thank you for coming on and talking about a little bit of your past, of kind of the struggles that you've faced with music creation and creativity, most of all, and just you as a person. It was just awesome, just chatting.
Absolutely.
And it's encouraging too to see all that you've done with not a ton of resources, and you're able to create good content that's meaningful and that connects with people.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to Just One Song. Thank you guys, Kurt, Adam, Leandra, and Monica, for having me on this week's episode of Just One Song. I'm RJ. You can check me out at TeleTalks on YouTube, Stream Talk Repeat on your favorite podcatcher. Also, I'm on Instagram at TeleTalks and Stream Talk Repeat, or you can follow my personal. I don't post there much, but you can check it out. RJ Smith, which is actually AREJAY Smith. And check out my friend's podcast, Just Surprise Me. Let's see, 60 Cycle Hum. Follow these guys, the podcast that you're listening to, Just One Song, on Instagram. But yeah, thank you guys again for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Free baked goods, check out Moon Sugar Magic.
All one word on Instagram.
Yeah.
Now, I will say up front, we are SD local at this point. But
I'll have to drive down.
That's right. But yeah, so check that out.
And a huge thank you to Monica as well.
Thank you so much, Monica, for filling up with my bullshit.
There you guys. This was Just One Song.